1217th day of war. Iran hit the U.S. military bases, but did it in such a way that everyone understood that Tehran did not have a serious mood to fight. After that, Trump announced that he had agreed to cease fire between the two countries. Israel confirmed this morning, saying that the operation reached all the goals and went even better than one could have expected. Which is similar to the truth. Nuclear facilities have been destroyed, Iran's military potential was thrown away many years ago, if not for decades. No one has stepped up for Iran, and Tehran himself could not demonstrate anything except terror against the peaceful citizens of Israel. The war has not overgrown the long-term and large-scale prices for oil are going down. In general, if Iran does not go wild, then it is possible to record the most successful military operation in many recent years. By the way, it was a surprise that Dmitry was given to Medvedev. His fascist nonsense designed for the inner audience fell into the eyes of the Americans. As a result, Trump dedicated a whole post to him, to put it mildly, by asking some questions. Medvedev was forced to quickly capitulate and write an excuse that he did not mean anything wrong. That's how the telegram slaps are blown, and there is no trace of the former goner. And Putin also got it from Putin. The Soviet Union attacked the military part of the Belgorod region. There are dead and wounded Russian military. Also became known details about strikes on the composition of the Cistern and Atlas oil base. In the Sumy region, Ukrainian military continue to counterattack, achieving success. So, in the frames of objective control, the participation of the tank in one of such counterattacks. The situation in the Sumy region for the Soviet Union is improving, although it's too early to talk about the complete stop of the Russian offensive and stabilization. In the Pokrovske region, Russian soldiers complain about large losses and the abundance of Ukrainian drones. Z-channels emphasize that everything is not easy there. An necrologist appeared for a Russian soldier who went from prison to war, but was not going to fight. He hoped that there would be a truce soon, then just more active Donald Trump. In anticipation of the speed of freedom and easy money, he signed a contract with the Ministry of Defense. But the plan was not destined to fail, he died. This and much more in today's Fresh Report, which you can support with your likes, comments, and subscribe to the channel. All these actions help promote the video, especially your subscriptions, so click on the subscribe button. Well, we move on to what happened in the past day. A couple of days after the American bombing of Iranian nuclear facilities, the Iranian regime still struck a crushing blow, but it seems to have been purely formal. Iran launched 10 missiles at the American bases in Qatar and 1 missile at the American base in Iraq, said Yenet, with a link to the Israeli source. The Iranian media published an official statement by the Iranian armed forces. It stated that in response to the U.S. attack on the peaceful nuclear facilities of Iran, the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps delivered a missile strike on the Al-Date base in Qatar during Operation Basharat al-Fath. This base is the headquarters of the U.S. Air Force. Just in case not the BBC, the headquarters of the Arab Service is located in London, and the largest strategic asset of the U.S. Army in the region of Western Asia. As stated in the statement of the U.S. of Iran, it writes Yeslahat News. The information agency Radar, with a reference to its sources, reported that Iran informed the U.S. on 2 diplomatic channels several hours before the strike on the objects in Qatar. Tehran also notified Doha about the upcoming attacks, added to the agency. Earlier, Qatar's authorities reported that a foreign military base under the administration of the U.S. had managed to evacuate in advance, that is, before the Iranian strike. The attack of Iran was rather a symbol of revenge than a real counterattack on the U.S. bombing. In fact, something similar happened in 2020, when Iran warned the U.S. about missile strikes in Iraq after the murder of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. The American military base was hit by a counterattack by Tehran, but not a single American was killed, so everyone was moved to cover in time. This time, according to the New York Times, the American base did not suffer at all. Trump stated that Iran gave a very weak response to the U.S. attack and warned about the strikes in advance, so no one was hurt. According to the U.S. president, 14 rockets were fired, 13 were shot down, and the remaining one was heading in a safe direction. I'm glad to inform you that not a single American was hurt and almost no damage was made. Most importantly, they pulled all this out of their system, and I hope there will be no more hatred. I want to thank Iran for the fact that it informed us in advance, which allowed us not to lose any life and not to receive any wounds. Perhaps now Iran will be able to move to peace and harmony in the region. I, with enthusiasm, urge Israel to do the same. Here, of course, Trump made a serious diplomatic mistake because of his love for the Post during the intelligence briefings. Iran made a blow first of all to save his face, but the label which has formed around such answers suggests that the intention of a limited character of the blow is not acceptable to the public, because it puts the opponent in a pitiful light and undermines the meaning of the blow, that is, it does not allow, in fact, to save the face, as in the case of Iran. What is called, do not abuse the defeated enemy, because it can turn off any rational thoughts from him, but let's hope that it will bring. Either way, the formal response of Iran clearly did not waver against the intentions of Trump, who announced the achievement of an agreement between Israel and Iran on a complete ceasefire. He reported on the True Social platform, emphasizing the determining role of the United States in regulating the conflict. And here, for some time, you can agree with him, because without the participation of the United States, everything would have been much longer, much more difficult, because Israel could destroy the forward object with its own forces, only, well, a ground landing of the special forces, which would be very difficult and so on. So for some time we will say thank you really to Donald Trump. According to the leaders of the White House, the parties agreed to cease fire, which should begin in stages in the near future. Iran will stop hostilities first, and after 12 hours, Israel will join the silence regime. Trump wrote in the beginning, but then it turned out that both sides should stop at the same time. Well, it's still Trump after all. After the end of the war is expected within a day, he wrote. Congratulations to everyone! Israel and Iran have reached a full and comprehensive agreement to cease fire. In 24 hours, the world will celebrate the official end of the 12-day war, Trump wrote. The president noted that this conflict could last for years and destroy the entire Middle East. However, the U.S. diplomatic efforts did not allow this to happen. Although, from my point of view, it was rather the bomb strikes by bombers in B-2 that did not allow this to happen. The end of Trump's statement called for peace and blessing for all sides of the conflict and the whole world. It should be noted here that a relatively reasonable rhetoric yesterday was passed from the side of Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated that his country is getting closer to achieving its goal aimed at eliminating the two main threats from the side of Iran: nuclear programs and ballistic missiles. This was reported by Reiter. I have no doubt that this is a regime that wants to destroy us. This is why we started this operation to eliminate two specific threats to our existence: the nuclear threat and the threat of ballistic missiles. We are moving step by step towards achieving these goals. We are very, very close to achieving them, he said. According to him, the Iranian forward nuclear object received serious damage as a result of a strike by American bombs. However, the scale of the destruction is still being evaluated. On the issue of Iran's enriched uranium, Netanyahu stated that Israel is carefully monitoring it. We are very attentive to this. I can say that this is an important component of the nuclear program. This is not the only component. This is not a sufficient component, but it is an important component. And we have interesting information about this, which, excuse me, I can't share with you, as he noted. That is, well, my assumption is still in force that, in fact, when Iran exported uranium from the Ford facilities, it was all followed up. Well, because we literally saw in satellite images the lines of trucks. It's hard to imagine that Israel does not know where this enriched uranium is now, and so on. It will be much easier to get it than it was in the Ford, because the Ford was one. At the same time, at least yesterday, Israel did not think of turning down its campaign, giving blows, including to objects that can be considered the symbols of the repressive machine of the regime. The TSAAL reported the defeat of the Qasr headquarters in Tehran. The Israel Defense Army carried out the largest wave of attacks on Tehran in all its time, the TSAAL reports. 50 Israel Air Force fighters were involved in it, who dropped more than 100 ammunition for military purposes. First target was the headquarters of the Iranian militia base, which is part of the Guard Corps of the Islamic Revolution. The second target was the headquarters of the Qasr Tar Allah, the Israel Defense Army reported. The TSAAL also confirmed the attack on the prison of the strict regime Evin in Tehran. Probably such strikes, which directly threaten the stability of the regime, made Iran talkative. In any case, now they say that there is no agreement with Israel, but Tehran is still ready to stop hostilities if Jerusalem does the same. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated that Tehran has the right to further strikes if Israel does not stop the attacks until 4 a.m. Tehran time. He reported on this in his social network Twitter. Although now it does not matter because we know how the events developed further. According to the Iranian diplomat, at that moment there was no formal agreement that the ceasefire with Israel was achieved. Israel started a war against Iran and not vice versa, noted Araghchi. He also emphasized that the final decision on the completion of the war will be made later, after the assessment of the action of the Israeli side. On the night of June 24, there was a report on the new strikes of Israel on Iran, early in the morning, about the launches of Iranian missiles on Israel. It would be possible to think that the truce declared by Trump failed, but apparently both sides simply decided to say the last harsh words in the current conflict. The Israeli telegram channel Abu Al Express compiled the following chronology of the events that took place last night. The time is indicated everywhere, Israeli. 1 o'clock in the night, Trump announces that in about 6 hours after the parties complete their tasks, the force of a 12-hour ceasefire will enter, which will then become permanent. This will end the 12-day war, according to Trump's statement. 1 o'clock 35, the CIA publishes another warning about evacuation of residents of District No. 6 in the Tehran region. It is recommended to evacuate. At 2 o'clock in the night, Israel starts a powerful attack on Tehran after the published warning about evacuation made before Trump's statement. One of the nuclear scientists was killed in Tehran. The Noor News Information Agency, affiliated with the regime, claims that the attack on Tehran this night became the most powerful in the last 12 days. 3.45 Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iran Abbas Araghchi claims that there's no ceasefire, but if the enemy stops the attack at 4 a.m. Iranian time, then Iran will stop. Iranian time is half an hour ahead of the Israeli time. 3.5 Israeli attacks on Tehran are absent. 4.03 Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iran Abbas Araghchi writes on Twitter that the Iranian forces will continue to attack until the very end, by 4 a.m. 4.04 Trump writes on Twitter, World through Force 510-540. The alarm worked twice after the launch from the territory of Iran, 2 separate waves direct hit in Beersheba, 3 Israelis were killed. 5.45 Trump writes on Twitter, Trump was right. 6.15 The alarm worked after the third wave of launches from the territory of Iran. 6.4 The alarm worked after the fourth wave of launches from the territory of Iran. 7 According to Trump's schedule, is expected to enter into the force of the ceasefire regime, the same channel transmitted a message to the Iranian media that the last missiles were launched in Israel allegedly before the entry of the truce into force. Although they flew to Israel when it already worked looks very deceiving, but let's hope that both sides have already decided that they are. Enough in general, this should not lead to confusion before the ceasefire. There are always the most tough attacks. The reason is simple. The parties are trying to do the maximum until the end of the military actions. They are also no longer forced to distribute their resources based on the fact that there will be long-term actions. In general, they can afford to use everything to the fullest, but once again, I will emphasize that Israel is hitting military objects, and Iran again struck exclusively on civilian objects. The entire Iranian missile company in the last 12 days is exclusively strikes on civilian objects. They aimed at military, but they do not manage to hit the military, so they prefer the tactics of terror, as in all recent years, Iran has been attacking Israel for a very long time with the help of Hamas, with the help of Hezbollah, sometimes directly launching missiles as in 2023, so yes, here the aggressor is certainly Iran. Well, as for the fact that before the ceasefire, the most active attacks, remember this knowledge, unfortunately it will still come in handy to us, so mutual shelling this night is not a sign that the ceasefire is broken. It is also possible that some aftershocks, a single blow after the ceasefire is also, unfortunately, a standard practice. At the same time, Netanyahu this morning said that Israel agreed to Trump's proposal to cease fire on Iran and that all the goals of the operation have been achieved. Iran also said that, in general, they have finished and responded to Israel as it should be. As for the preliminary results, which we will talk about in more detail today with you in a separate video, but the preliminary results are as follows. If Trump did not dream of all this, and many things indicate this, well, in addition to the fact that there is already official confirmation from Israel and Iran, I wrote this part of the report before it appeared. So let's still say two things for me indicated. The first is the insight rate that Israel is ready to finish the operation. The second is the oil prices that went down. They are up after the blow of on the basis of the USA, since Nacke struck a symbolic attack, they are like setting up a serious war. Then the results are the following, exceeding all expectations, based on the fact that all sides have agreed on a truce now. So Iran will no longer have nuclear weapons for a long time, plus I think they will soon conclude a deal with the USA. Well, when they say that they have avenged everything for everything, again, I believe that the Ford object is destroyed or close to this, because otherwise Israel would act differently and would not stop, but because the situation in Israel is better than it is now, completely suppressed by the Iranian Air Force, Iran respectively in a very, very shabby position. So if Israel believed that the goals were not achieved, the goal, I remember, was exactly to destroy the nuclear infrastructure, then Israel would just continue. Yes, it would be with a greater risk and so on, but there would simply be no better chance for Israel. And since nuclear weapons are a threat, then Israel would go for it, due to the fact that we see that Israel is not going to continue this operation of this war. Then I make the conclusion that they are at least sure that nuclear objects are really destroyed, and the big question is why not to be destroyed. But that is, like Jibu 57, they are mob penetrator. They were developed exactly for such cases. We saw from satellite images that they were launched exactly where it was necessary. Well, what are the big doubts that everything is destroyed there? I don't have them at least. The prices for oil did not soar, they did not begin to overflow, and Israel did not start bombing the key Iranian infrastructure related to oil. Moreover, if Iran now also concludes a deal with the United States, then the United States will also remove sanctions from Iran, and Iranian oil will pour into the market in much larger volumes, which will reduce oil prices. Third, Trump saw that the threats and decisive actions can be achieved more than with endless empty threats. The world works through force. Trump himself wrote about this. Let's hope that this knowledge Trump will not forget in 5 minutes. It will have an impact on his role in the war between Russia and Ukraine. Well, Tulsi Gabbard was written in his book. This is great because the US intelligence cannot be led by a sadist and a great lover of Putin. This is just a traitor at the highest level. It shouldn't be there. It shouldn't have been initially, sorry, but better late than never. Of course, I'm afraid to look. In the end. Don't forget that you are in the regime of fanatics earlier, but for now, this is the picture. Here it seems to me very important to remind you that no matter how successful the war is, and this so far looks extremely successful for Israel, all the goals have been achieved, there are no strategic losses, and in general, everything is much better than expected, because since the first day of the operation, Israel has just destroyed. Iranian PVO, well, that is just super better than all expectations, but that is why I want to remind you that any war is the death of people on both sides of the death of civilians. The Naxians don't give a beep. Well, that is, the earth is glassy, but we know that in Iran there are quite a few. People who, to put it mildly, are not fans of the regime and who have become the hostage of the dictator. Well, that is, they are literally hanging there so that you understand, yes, if they do not agree with something with the official Tehran, well, not. Everyone is hanging straight, but the practice is widespread, therefore, war is the death of people on both sides. Unfortunately, a large number of Israeli citizens died, despite the super successful operation, despite the fact that the PBO worked perfectly, but it is impossible to intercept all the rockets, especially when it comes not about the pieces of the pipes that are launched by Hamas from Palestinian autonomy, but when it comes to ballistic real rockets that are launched by Iran. Unfortunately, there are dead, there are injured in Israel. I have acquaintances. It was all good and not alive, but the apartment was seriously blown up by the explosion wave, so this must always be remembered. Not too much, even with those combat actions that are justified, successful, and correct as the operation of Israel. All the same, these are human losses. All the same, these are innocent lives that are ruined, which people who will no longer exist will not be able to, I don't know, do what they wanted. So any war, any violence is always a tragedy, even if it is necessary, even if it is right and justified, it is still the death of people. Let's not forget about it. Well, you can't go past the curious moment. Trump finally paid attention to the existence of Dmitry Medvedev and his recent post, where he hinted at the transfer of nuclear weapons to Iran a little. Did I hear how the former president of Russia, Medvedev, slid the word into the letter I, nuclear, damn. In English it is much more ridiculous because there Trump writes N-word. N-word has its own meaning in America, so like he writes nuclear in brackets. Well, in Russian it does not look so funny, and stated, continues Trump, that he and other countries will supply nuclear warheads to Iran. Did he really say that, or is it the fruit of my imagination? If he really said it, and if it is confirmed, please tell me about it immediately with a mouthpiece. By the way, literally, I cannot be treated so carelessly. I think that is why Putin is the boss. By the way, if someone thinks that our equipment was excellent during these weekends, then of course the most powerful and best equipment we have, and for 20 years precedes the rest, these are our nuclear submarines. This is the most powerful deadly weapons ever created, and just launched 30 Tomahawks, all 30 perfectly hit the target. So in addition to our wonderful pilots and fighters, thank you to the captain and crew, wrote Donald Trump, True Social. Well, that is, in the same place, Dmitry Medvedev simply provoked that the American president threatens Russia with nuclear weapons, just like that. Oh, I think I would like to see how Dmitry Medvedev is given a slap in the face. I'm sure it was the most powerful thing ever. Having read Trump's reaction, Medvedev blew himself up and said that the RF would not supply nuclear weapons to Iran. Regarding the carelessness of President Trump, Medvedev wrote, I condemn the American strike on Iran. It has not reached its goals, however. Russia does not intend to supply nuclear weapons to Iran because, unlike Israel, we are participants in the agreement on non-distribution of nuclear weapons. I know very well that this will lead to it because I headed our nuclear forces, but other countries could, and I meant it. We definitely should not argue about who has more nuclear bombs, especially because the new agreement START, which I once signed with the US president, is still in force at the moment. The question is what will happen next, wrote Medvedev on Twitter. Well, as you can see, our apartment war has blown away. However, the Medvedev boss also did not show up in the current crisis. Iran is dissatisfied with the level of support from the Russian side. Khamenei sent a letter to Putin with a request for help. Reported by Reiter, head of the foreign ministry of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, today, or rather yesterday, already met with Vladimir Putin in Moscow. As Reiter writes, with a link to the Iranian official, the minister brought to the Kremlin a letter from the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, with a request for help. Also, the agency states that according to the data of his sources, Iran is not yet satisfied with the level of support from the Russian side and wants Putin to do more for Tehran Tehran in his confrontation with Israel and the United States. At the same time, Ryder's interlocutors did not specify what specific help Iran wants to receive. Putin, at the meeting with Rakshai, called the blows on Iran unprovoked aggression, which has no excuse. He added that Russia is making an effort to help the Iranian people, but did not bring any details. I don't know if it is necessary to say this, but Russia does not have so many opportunities to interfere in the Iranian conflict. Our master code from the Carnegie Foundation notes that it is unlikely that Russia could increase the supply of air defense and combat aviation in the face of a crisis, since all air defense went to the Ukrainian front and the production of aircraft is simply not forced. And now the VKS, if desired, will not be able to establish an unmanned air zone over Iran due to the high-quality Israeli air defense and potential problems with Russian logistics. In particular, the VKS does not have the experience of refueling in the air or the sufficient number of flying tankers. The only serious help that Russia could provide, in my opinion, is the supply of modernized bayonets, both to Iran itself and its proxy for strikes on Israeli-American objects, of course, due to the weakening of night attacks on Ukrainian cities. On this, Russia, as you understand, did not go. But before we move on, I remind you that you can support the channel financially. You can do this on Patreon, the link to which is in the description, and by buying the MVPN. This is a means of blocking that allows you to bypass blockages. Watch YouTube at normal speed, use Twitter, Instagram, and whatever you want. The state should not decide what to watch, listen, and read. You can buy the MVPN by the link in the description. It is legally allowed in Russia to buy VPNs and use them, well, by buying the MVPN. You support the release of new videos on this channel, and we move on to Europe. As Putin is deprived of another partner in the Middle East, the Kremlin's 6 have been activated in Europe, which no one is going to bomb so far. Hungary and Slovakia have blocked the 18th sanctions package of the European Union against Russia, proposed by the European Commission in early June. This was stated by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hungary, Peter Sayart, at the meeting of the head of foreign policy agencies of the EU in Brussels. According to him, the package would blow up the energy security of the countries of the region and would lead to a growth of utility rates. We did so because the European Union wants to forbid countries, including Hungary and Slovakia, to buy cheap Russian natural gas and cheap Russian oil, as they did earlier, Sayart said. In addition to energy restrictions, the sanctions package included measures against the shadow fleet that transports Russian oil, as well as new restrictions in the financial and defense sectors. For their approval, a unanimous agreement of all 27 countries of the European Union is needed. It remains only to repeat once that if Europe wants to be a serious geopolitical actor, it will have to step back from a consensus approach to making decisions and hinting to renegades like Urban and Fiza that if they don't like European subsidies, then no one will keep them in the bloc. But there's also good news. Another nominal ally of Putin in Europe continues to make massive blows to the back. The Press Bureau of the Soviet Union of Russia continues to report about the ongoing supplies of Serbian weapons and ammunition to Ukraine by using the following schemes. According to the information received in the Soviet Union of Russia, Ukrainian military is very grateful to the Serbian arms and ammunition manufacturers for their contribution to the maintenance of the combat capabilities of the Soviet Union. Kyiv government notes that enterprises in the Serbian PKK, despite the increasing pressure on Belgrade and the country of Moscow, are increasing the export of military products into the conflict zone of the collective West from Russia, said in the Service of Foreign Intelligence. According to the SWR, produced at Defense Enterprises of Serbia, ammunition is sent to Ukraine through the NATO countries in the form of complete sets of parts for assembly, which allows Kyiv in the future to formally receive, as it were, not Serbian military products, but assembled at weapons plants of Western states, such as Czech Republic and Bulgaria. It is not clear what the SWR does not like. You ask not to supply ammunition to Ukraine. Serbia does not supply ammunition to Ukraine, they supply it to Czech Republic and Bulgaria. What are the questions? According to obtained data, the SWR continues. In recent times, the Krušek plant from the city of Valjevo sold several large batches of kits for the construction of 122 missiles for Arzograd by the Czech company Polichesk Strujany. The Lazinskaya Defense Enterprise Elling sent to the Bulgarian company IMCO kits for the production of the same missiles, as well as 120 mines. They added to the SWR, which, by the way, is most likely true. It should be noted that the serious public pressure on Serbia on the part of Russia on the issue of supplies of ammunition in Ukraine developed immediately after the visit to the Pobeda parade in Moscow, commented by a military informant on the Z channel. Seems that having received no clear answer, on the contrary, only the promise of the Serbian president to participate in the restoration of Ukraine and the support of its territorial integrity, the conflict was decided to escalate further, is believed in the Z channel. Well, good luck with the direct pressure on Serbia. I think that Serbia, which is trying to sit on all the chairs at once, well, when it turns out to be a direct pressure and, in fact, a threat, who would it be interesting to choose? Europe, with which it wants to associate itself, with which it has economic ties, or Russia, which scares it and threatens it? An interesting question. Write your opinion in the comments. General Staff of the VSU reported on the attack on the Atlas oil base, which I told you about earlier. Here is what the Ukrainian military department wrote. As part of the decrease in offensive capabilities of the enemy, on the night of June 23, the units of the Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in cooperation with the missile troops and the artillery, launched a strike on the Atlas oil base located in the Rostov region. The plant is used to provide fuel with lubricating materials for the Russian military units involved in armed aggression against Ukraine. In the temporarily occupied territories of the Lugansk and Donetsk regions, an achievement has been confirmed with our means of destruction. The area of the target has been set on fire. The results of the attack are clarified. The defense forces continue to take all measures to undermine the military-economic potential of Russian occupiers and force the Russian Federation to stop armed aggression against Ukraine.
Продолжение следует. Слава Украине, пишут они, героям слава. Обращает на себя внимание упоминание ракетных войск и артиллерии. Возможно, удар был нанесен одним из украинских ракетных комплексов. Возможно, это был длинный Нептун, а то и баллистический Сапсан, который разрабатывался еще до войны и об успешном...
Attention to the mention of rock troops and artillery. Perhaps the blow was made by one of the Ukrainian missile complexes. Perhaps it was a long Neptune or a ballistic Sapsan in addition. The sources have asked to confirm the attack on the composition of fuel in the Zaporozhye region. 20 fuel lines were damaged and the movement at the site was stopped. On the eve of the attack, Gur of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine declared an attack on the cistern with fuel in the Zaporozhye region on the railway section between the settlements of Levadno and Malachansk. Sources of the island and the emergency services of the region confirmed this attack. This happened on June 21 at the crossing of Malachansk-Svetlinskoye in the Militopol region. The train, which followed the occupied Volnovakha and Dizhenke, transported 40 cistern wagons with gasoline and diesel fuel. During the strike, one of the cisterns immediately lit up. The rescuers could not start extinguishing the fire for long because of the continuous blows of UAVs. Only the next day, for the evacuation of the remaining 19 cistern wagons, a locomotive drove to the site of the attack. Prior to that, up to 21 cisterns with gasoline and diesel fuel could have been damaged or destroyed as a result of the attack. As of the evening of June 22, the fire was extinguished. 17 cistern wagons were evacuated from the site of the shelling. According to the sources, 11 wagons were left at the site of the shelling. Another one left the site of the shelling. Finally, according to the sources in the external services of the Belgorod region, on the night of June 20, UAVs attacked a military unit located on Muravlinskoye Street in the village of Rogovato in the Staroskalsky district. As a result, another 11 were injured. The morning of June 20, the authorities of the Belgorod region stated that the village of Rogovato was damaged by the construction of an agricultural enterprise. Of course, unlike the blows to the Ukrainian military units, there will be no enlightenment in the national media. No warning, no official messages, not even formal inquiries, not especially loud commands. Russian soldiers must die quietly and imperceptibly for the Russian society. Russian terrorist attacks also continue. On June 23, they did not limit themselves to Kiev. In Belgorod Dnestrovsk, a Russian missile hit a closed face, said Vladimir Zelensky. Absolutely insane hit. Russian missile right on the face in Belgorod Dnestrovsk Odessa region, wrote the president of Ukraine. According to preliminary data, it was a hit of a ballistic missile. There were no children in the face. Now there are vacations, but there were employees in the face. Unfortunately, people can be under the rubble. It is already known about the two victims of my condolences to relatives and loved ones. Later, the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine reported that the number of victims increased to 14. The face is in fact completely destroyed. The rescue operation continues. All the necessary services are involved. None of these Russian blows are accidental. The Russian army knows exactly where it is hitting, and these are demonstrative blows. The Russian leadership is not going to change. They are not going to end the war on their own. That is why it is necessary to strengthen the pressure of sanctions for Russia. Now we are defending ourselves from Russian blows. But if there is no compulsion from Russia to the world, we will have to think about protecting our faces in hospitals and ordinary residential buildings and in other European countries, where Russian killers can get. It is necessary to stop the murder and the blow. It is necessary to press on Russia, Zelensky writes, absolutely right. The blow is absolutely monstrous, fortunately. There were no children there, but again, you can see all the details of this blow on the internet. Nothing is nearby. There are no military facilities at all. Even if you look at the map with a magnifying glass, even if you look at the photos, nothing hints at anything. Well, that is, it's just some kind of terror that Russia continues all this time. When it is so emphasized that there are no possibilities, as Putin was asked at the press conference, Sashev was hit by an old house. He says, this is not a residential house. This is an ISU object. Well, apparently here they will also say what it means in the face, and there, I don't know, that Godzilla is hidden under this floor. Well, in general, an absolutely monstrous, bloodthirsty hypocrisy that continues, which must be stopped. In Kramatorsk, the Donetsk region rescue work was completed after the strike of the 22nd June air bomb, during which a 4-story residential house was partially destroyed. 5 people died, 4 more were injured, reported by the CPSU. Now let's move on to the front. In the last days, I told you a lot about the relative success of the defense forces in Sumchina, where it is possible, if not to stop, to hold back the advance of the Russians. And now an interesting video has appeared about how such a hold down occurs in Asin Canal. In Factum describes it as follows. Ang 1st of the Northern Brigade left Krapovshchina and works in the forest with the Russian position in the area of Yablanovka, which is in Sumchina. It can be seen how several enemy FPVs were used in the area, but the crew put the smoke, i.e. the smoke curtain, and successfully returned. As you can see, the tanks continue to remain a terrible weapon even in the era of the drone war. In Sumchina, they are even more effective because the opposing Marseille have no equipment at all. Let me remind you that throughout the offensive of the Sumchina region, the Osentra found only one lost unit of Russian equipment, and not the BMP, but the armored vehicle. We move to the Pokrovskaya direction. Z-Channel Don't Stop War tells about heavy fighting on the western flank of the Pokrovskaya direction, where the Russian troops carry large losses due to the abundance of Ukrainian drones in the air, not a lack of their own. Pokrovskaya direction, he writes, now the gangsters have started an attack on the position of the elves, the Z-Channel writes. The main task is to establish control over the inhabited point successfully, and completely occupy the right flank in front of the border with the Dnipropetrovsk region. There is a move to the north from Novoselgievka. There's also an attack from the west to cut off the entire logistics route. The situation is tense and the shortage of technical resources is very much affected by lives, they write, South Donetsk direction, we are moving there. There, Russian armed forces continues to try to advance almost across the front, leaving the Dnipropetrovsk region from the south. Here, the deep state fixes Russian tactical successes in the area of Fedorovka and Shevchenko. This direction remains one of the most threatening. After Pokrovske, however, the situation here may change in favor of the Soviet Union. A new army corps will be deployed in the direction, which will replace the tactical group Ugledar, as reported by the ex-commander of this group, General Lieutenant Sergei Neev. As they assume, a Center Unit observer is talking about the 20th Army Corps, whose composition was announced recently. 4 of the brigades entered in the 20th Cavalry are engaged in defense in the South Donetsk direction. We will hope that unification in the Corps will make this defense more effective, and I am very much looking forward to how the Army Corps will show themselves. Because this should solve one of the main Ukrainian problems with the coordination between the units. We will hope that the result will surprise everyone. The direction of the attack towards Konstantinovka is going to the north of Toretsk. According to Deep State, Russian troops have practically occupied the village of Krymsk and Dachna in the northern suburbs of Toretsk. Such a relative, large-scale promotion as the western one at the junction of the Pokrovsko and Toretsk directions is not yet observed here, but the situation may change at any moment. The northern direction, a significant exacerbation of the situation, is recently fixed on the recent calm northern direction, where, as the Ukrainian military observer Konstantin Mashavets believes, the Russian command decided not to wait for the north to come closer to the country of Liman or the Chasiv Yar and decided to go to the city of Vilab. Deep State tells just about these battles. The fighters of the Signum 53 battalion published a few days ago footage of the enemy's defeat on the outskirts of Serebryanka, says Deep State. We have long been observing the activity at the site. From the point of view of the analysis of the events, it is difficult, as well as another example of the fact that the analysis of the front and the display on the map exclusively on the Asin have long been not a 100%, the analysts note. The events took place more than a week ago, but their development is still going on, since similar raids of the enemy deep into the territory from the red zone in the direction of Grigorievka and Serebryanka happen regularly. If someone thinks that it is possible to simply draw some progress on the map by one video, then these people are deeply mistaken, since there is still a lot of clarification and responsibility behind such definitions. It should be noted that it is precisely with these outlines that Zeta Sintras are very much at fault in one video, which are then forced to paint the territory back themselves and justify themselves as being counterattacked by the Soviet Union, since in most cases there was nothing to counterattack there, since Russians did not settle there where they reached in the previous video. There are many factors of such phenomenon, but of the main ones we would highlight, the unreliable presentation of reports on the real situation of the case, and the transformation of the line of combat interaction, which has acquired a new character, which involves the frequent appearance of areas with a large number of gray zones on the map. Gray zone has also increased in the area, but we will write a separate post on the transformation of the conflict line. Fighters of the defense force are trying to contain the pressure on the Grigoriev-Serebryanka line, but the situation is getting worse, and we continue to monitor the situation and react to changes as we clarify the real situation. South Chasiv Yar and Deep State are fixing the progress of Russian armed forces in the Klishchevka region. Here, the Russian forces have been trying to enter the North Donetsk-Donbass Canal for a month and settle there, but they still haven't succeeded. In the past, the Russians controlled the northeast bank of the canal, but were abandoned from there during the Ukrainian counteroffensive of 1923 and still cannot return. Now about the statistics. The channel Akagora publishes an infographic of the intensity of Russian attacks, according to the General Staff of the Soviet Union. Over the previous week, from June 16 to June 22, the number of Russian assaults decreased by 20% compared to the previous week. Moreover, this decrease is noticeable in 9 different directions out of 11. Channels assume that this is not due to the exhaustion of Russian offensive potential, but to bad weather. Well, let's see if this trend will remain. At the same time, according to another Kagura infographic about the pace of promotion in Russian armed forces from June June 16 to June 22, they remained unchanged and are about 15 square kilometers a day, the same as a week before that, but less than 2 weeks before that. The BPA detachment, the Omega Special Mission Center, Gostrokardazi, shows an efficient combination of pro-democracy and modern technologies, as well as demonstrates the benefit of the engineering radiation structures, which have recently become a hot topic in Ukrainian social networks. This is what Ukrainian drone operators write. How does the Putenka network work, or Putenka? Probably Putenka is still on the front, which, by the way, stopped being widely used after the First World War. Two Russian soldiers moved to positions, hearing the drone, accelerated and got tangled in the wire, which gave them a little time to attack the drone as a result of 1-200 and 1-300. Putenka allows you to win a little time for a successful attack, either in close combat, or in artillery, or with drones. This is far from the first case when we catch the occupant thanks to such a protective means, says the spicy cartridges. If you remember, in the spring, they repeatedly wrote about the splashes of those who wanted to sign a contract with the Russian army on the wave of rumors about the soon-to-be truce under Trump. However, no truce has happened, and now trusted Russians pay for their naivety. This necrology was published in social networks. We have bad news. Unfortunately, Murat Mukashev was killed on June 11 during a special military operation. There he was after being in the places of deprivation of freedom under Article 228.1 of the drug. After several months of continuous proposals and psychological pressure, he signed a contract. He did this not wanting to kill or destroy, but only when he learned about Trump's strong desire to pressure both sides and bring them to an immediate truce. In this, he saw a chance to go to freedom instead of imprisonment for 10 years of strict regime. The truce did not happen, they fix. Further, Mukashev's relatives collect funds to identify, transport the body, as well as the organization of the funeral. Apparently, it did not work to cut the money for the truce. Therefore, not only the malice, but also the stupidity. Here are the pillars on which the Russian army is held. Be more adequate, be more attentive, do not be led to any kind of warming. You want to know, like, what goes to the truce, what does not go to the truce? Watch this channel, watch these reports or those analysts who, in your opinion, perceive what is happening most adequately. The Russian No Contacts channel demonstrates another example of supporting the discipline in the Russian army. In a video from Russian social networks, 2 soldiers are tied to a stone pole for a rope on which 2 more heavy stones hang. The plate was thrown by the comrades on the battlefield. 10 people were killed for their cowardice and indifference. Each person must become a part of the collective upbringing. It is written there. Judging by the video, collective upbringing consists of beatings, which are replaced by a stick. Such videos appear regularly and are most likely posted by the executioners themselves to intimidate other coworkers who intend to refuse meat assaults. I hope to use these videos to show you why you shouldn't go to the Russian army. Well, I don't know what you saw in this video, maybe it's completely blurred because YouTube doesn't like it that much. But in general, it most likely hit you if you more or less follow what's happening. In Moscow, an incident was recorded, during which representatives of the military police attempted to forcefully remove a soldier suffering from a serious spine injury. Despite his serious condition, the employees ignored medical evidence and acted with force. He can't do it. What do you want from him? Call a doctor. He'll throw himself away here. What will he do? I warn you once again that I have a spine injury. All these actions may lead to the fact that my legs will refuse. The police officer also stated that police officers regularly find new pretexts in order to forcefully take him to the unit. Therefore, do not address me like that. I just ask you in a humane way because I will refuse without a word. And you, respectively, will go to jail because of this. Do you need it? Victor, we also ask you in a humane way to talk to the medical services that you need at night. Of course, and on Saturday they broke into the apartment. They also wanted to show medical services. The schools of the annexed regions will stop studying Ukrainian language and Ukrainian literature. Ministry of Education of Russia at the end of last week announced the project of the order to change the federal program for schools. The document excludes the school program as a whole. The educational subject is native, that is, Ukrainian language. The ministry also proposes to stop studying Ukrainian literature from the 1st to the 9th grade. For the exception of the program, Ukrainian language as native on all educational levels. The commercial newspaper noted that in 2023-2024, the Ukrainian language as native was studied only in the Zaporozhsk and Kherson regions. And in the past, according to the statement of parents, also in Donetsk, LPR, and Crimea, and Bashkortostan. According to the existing program, the Ukrainian language as native is recommended to be studied for 736 hours, 260 hours in the 1st and 4th classes, 340 in the 5th and 9th, 136 in the 10th and 11th. The project of the order implies the cancellation of the course entirely. The project of the order also excludes from the school program the course of Ukrainian literature as native from the 1st and 9th classes. In the current program, for these classes, 280 DOA training hours were spent on this subject, and 112 in the 1st and 4th classes, 175 in the 9th. Ukrainian literature will remain only in the program of the 10th and 11th classes. A neat note to the document says that these changes are due to the changed geopolitical situation in the world. The inclusion of the Ukrainian language and the school program in the annexed Ukrainian regions is different from the fact that the Russian authorities declare publicly. Putin repeatedly stated that Russia, with respect to the Ukrainian culture and language, has never allowed anything that is allowed in Ukraine in relation to the Russian culture and the Russian language, Putin said in October 2022. Last year, Putin called on not to repeat the mistakes of the past in the field of studying the Ukrainian language in the annexed regions. Our policy in the field of the Russian language should be soft, natural, and based on the needs of life, the Russian dictator said then. In fact, if someone needed evidence that Putin was leading the war not with the so-called Kiev regime, but with the Ukrainian people and Ukrainian identity, then here it is. Putin wants to erase the Ukrainian identity, which the Russian Empire and the USSR failed to do. Ukrainians need him either dead or refugees or Russians. Accordingly, Ukraine is fighting not just for the independence from Russia, but for the very existence of its people. And what Russia is doing has a clear designation. This is called ethnocide. Google it. It differs from genocide, but it is also an incredible crime according to all international norms. This is an attempt to destroy the essence of the people, to dissolve it, to destroy its cultural manifestations, to destroy its language. In fact, Russia does exactly this in the occupied territories. Ukrainian journalist Yuri Budizov makes another video, where he demonstrates the collision of the heroes of the Soviet Union with reality. In a store specialized in army equipment, the helmet of the Chelyabinsk region, the RF, the veteran of the special operation, was outraged by the presence of a medal of awards. Here we look at the medals that are sold in the city for the capture of Bakhmuta, for the liberation of the Kursk region, for the medal. For the courage sold here for the service in Afghanistan, for the achievement of the veterans of the combat actions.
И вот там самое дальнее, вот за освобождение Курской области. То у нас здесь молодцы, здесь работники такие.
There's the farthest one for the liberation of the Kursk region. We have good guys here, we have such shop workers here. They painted everything in the world, they got lost. Are you shooting? Who do I want to shoot? I say, who do I want to shoot? I say, who do I want to shoot? I don't even ask you who do I want to shoot with. I say, free access and shooting. Free access? Well, I'll ask for your permission. Now everyone will go and talk about what you are doing. Now all our veterans will come here and see what you are talking about. Why are you confused in nature? Why are you yelling? Now everyone will buy medals, go to them. Some veterans are no longer outraged because they are lying on the ground and their relatives and parents are outraged for them. They reported that Viktor Chosnikov was buried in extremely unsuitable conditions. They are also outraged that for some reason they betrayed the earth without any military honors. Only a sign with his name is installed on the grave. Look, relatives and friends, where he was buried, in what condition the grave is. Here are the heroes of Russia, the army of Russia, the elite troops of the Black Sea Fleet. That's how our head Rinat Khairuddinov and our military command were buried. The woman reported that they were not even informed about the funeral and did not invite them. According to her, the funeral was held by the head of the administration of the Nitvin Municipal District, Rinat Khairuddinov, and the local military command. This is how the head of the district crowns the dead soldiers of his elite troops of the Russian army. These two stories about oblivion about the fact that these people are not heroes, no one needs them. Look how much these medals cost. 900 rubles. 900 rubles. This means that the person who sold this medal really needed money. Well, we saw how it works, how these veterans just look for food in the dumps. Russia does not care about these people. Russia does not care about all people. The Kremlin does not care about who is a hero there, who is not a hero. Just like the Russian population, no one has sent them there among those who will interact with them in ordinary civilian life. Therefore, yes, these people are forever covered with shame, forever with their injuries, if they remain alive. And if not, they will be buried without honor, without anything, not even telling relatives. Well, Michael Nacke was with you, and see you soon. All the best. Bye.
Пока.